Hey guys, this is Caleb with DSLR Video Shooter with a look at my studio setup for when I do my podcast. We're going to be looking at how I do my podcast top to bottom, and obviously production is a big part of it, and I've changed my setup, tweaked it over time. So I'm going to show you some of the things I have set up for my actual recordings. So first, we'll look at this table. This is an IKEA table. It has these leaves that pop out to extend it. I like to use this when I need to show some things and demo some stuff where I need a surface. It also doubles as our small kitchen table, which goes in the corner so I can move it around. Again, this is a one bedroom apartment that I work out of, so that's great for the table. For audio, I have a Rode NTG2, and we'll look at the camera setup and how it's hooked up. But this is kind of the viewpoint of, from what I can see looking at the cameras. So there's my two cameras. In the distance, we have on the left a Canon 6D, and on the right we have the EOS M. Again, we'll take a close look at those in a second. And if we turn to our right, we see I have a reflector here. And that's kind of giving me a little rim light, as well as, you can't really see it right now, but it's giving me, you can sort of see that shadow, a little bit of a bounce onto the wall. Sometimes I'll set up an LED panel for a background light, but this is one of the easiest, quickest ways to get some lighting. So now let's go take a look at the camera setup. This is kind of a mess, but trust me, it works really well. First thing you're gonna notice, I have this cord running to my headphones. This is great because obviously I'm doing this by myself, so being able to listen to my audio, make sure it sounds good before I record is crucial. So this is the Sonal headphones, and I've done a review on those. They're great. It has this really nice long coiled cord, and I'm using my trusty H4n. So the microphone that I use, the NTG2, runs and goes into the H4n. From the H4n, I split it because the H4n doesn't have a dedicated headphone jack, and that goes into the camera, the EOS M, and also out to my headphones. This is all mounted on a Velbin tripod. These are really cheap, really strong. Love them to pieces. And then I have my F&V monitor for this camera, and this is going to be my close-up camera. So this is going to have a nice detailed shot, something like this of the table, which is going to be great for looking at detailed shots. So that's the EOS M. I do have an Olympus 50mm on here. Both the lenses I'm using today together are around $100–150 to combine. So great lenses. Wouldn't use them all the time, but they're fantastic for stuff like this. So I have this one to kind of give you an idea of my aperture settings. I've got this guy at 5.6. And same with this other lens. The lens on the 60 here, let me bump up my exposure a little bit, is a Olympus 35–70 f4. So I've got this one set to 5.6. There's a ton of stuff on here, but really all you really need is the camera and a monitor and the lens. This other stuff, this is just how I have it configured for production use. So that's the second camera setup. That's giving me my nice wide shots, which is going to be something like that, give or take. And that's going to be my wide shot. So that's the two camera setup. Not really rocket science. Audio, you could go straight into the camera. Normally, I just run my Sennheiser wireless microphone into here, but I'm actually going to have it in the shot today, so I needed to set up this setup. This is going to be a little higher quality, and I will also record on the recorder and in the camera, so I have a backup. So that's a quick and dirty setup. You can obviously see it doesn't take too much to set this up, and really easy way to get a two-camera kind of podcast setup. And again, you wouldn't need all this stuff. You could really use any two cameras. You wouldn't have to have all the crap on the Canon 6D. Okay guys, so we've done all the production. Now we're going to take a look at post-production and what I do. I use Final Cut X, and I'm just really quickly going to talk about that a little bit. I used Final Cut 7 originally, but once it started to slow down, I knew I had to switch to either Premiere or Final Cut X. I really hated Final Cut X, you know, when they first released it. It just had so many problems. It has gotten better, and not until probably 6 months or a year ago did I actually purchase it, and hated it even more. But then as I started to learn how to use it properly and just kind of completely clean the slate when it comes to thinking about editing, I really fell in love with it. And I think it's great for people like me who publish a lot of content, because you can edit so fast in Final Cut X. The way it works really works well, and you can publish straight to Vimeo and YouTube from Final Cut X, so that's nice, a nice feature. In organizing everything when you have this many episodes, like what we see up here, this is only stuff that I've been working on in the last, you know, 2 weeks or something. So if I had it all the content I've had done here, it would be a huge list. So this allows me really to organize it nicely. So that's why I use Final Cut X, and it's $300. You can't go wrong with that. So now we're going to actually import our camera cards. I use a Lexar card reader. I really like it. It's pretty affordable too. So I'm just gonna hook that up with the 2 cards in, and Final Cut should pull up an import screen automatically. Otherwise you can hit Command I. Here it is. And we can see I have both my camera cards hooked up. And so we can look at this a couple different ways, but here I have 5 episodes. These 4, I wore the same shirt, which is a big no-no, but I'll, you know, spread them out. But we're gonna actually be importing this one. This is a custom EVF tutorial. So I'm gonna select import, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it in a new event, because we're creating events are essentially projects. And we're going to put that in the podcast library. So you can create libraries in Final Cut, which is really nice. So I separate my podcasts from my, you know, actual production work. So we're going to put that in the podcast library. It's going to be a new event. We're going to call it custom EVF mount. And then I select, normally this would be unselected, but I select create optimized media and proxy under transcoding. You can edit without transcoding in Final Cut X, but if you check these, Final Cut X will start transcoding these, you know, if you take a break. So if you grab some coffee, it'll start transcoding in the background, which will make it even faster. So I definitely select that. We're gonna hit import. And that's the one camera. We're gonna hit Command I again, go to the second camera, and navigate to the second shot, the second angle here. And we're gonna hit import on that sucker. Same settings. And boom, we're starting to import. We can see right here when we look at the background tasks, if I click on that, this window pops up. We can see that our clips are importing, and they'll start transcoding as they import. I don't have USB 3, that my Mac is just before USB 3, so it's a little slower, but you know, we're getting there. This is a kind of a long episode, and I had, you know, messed up, so I had to redo some parts. So once this finishes importing, we'll jump into the next step. Okay, so now the importing is done, and we are now going to close this window. We can see it's transcoding. The second I start actually doing anything, it'll pause that. So we can look here, up here on the left, and we have our custom EVF mount event, and then we have our 2 cameras here. Now, the first thing we want to do is link these 2. And one of these cameras has audio, so I just run the audio straight into the cameras we talked about before, so I don't have a third audio file. So to link these 2, we're just going to select them both, and then we just right-click, and we say New Multicam. So we're treating this kind of like a multicam. And if you have 2 files and the audio is fairly clear, you really won't have to mess with a lot of these settings as long as you have that use audio for synchronization checked. If you were having it was really complicated, you would want to, you know, name each of these, the camera name and yada, yada, yada. So what I'm going to do is just going to name this custom EVF mount multicam clip. I try to keep the name the same, because when you have this many episodes that you're publishing per week and putting together, you want to keep it all together. So it's automatically in our same event. I'm gonna hit OK. It shouldn't take long at all. And boom, there it is. So now we can see not only do we have our 2 cameras, but now we have our multi-clip. And what we want to do is double click that, and here are our 2 files. we can see that I started one camera a little bit before the other one, and we're just going to check the sound here. Better lighting on this thing. One of these little
perfect, so they sound just in sync.
Threads. You can get these with monitor
you can
arms.
mute them and check them. So now that we know they're in sync, we don't have to do anything else. We're just going to copy them both. And what I'm going to do now is create a new project. So this is actually going to be our project for editing. So same thing, custom EVF mount. Boom. And then we're just going to paste this right in there. Let me zoom out a little bit. So now we have both cameras. The top angle is the close-up. The bottom is, I can close this so we can see. The bottom is the first angle. And obviously we have a pretty significant color difference, and we'll deal with that in a second. But now we're all linked up, which is great. So what I'm going to do now is just begin my editing. It's pretty straightforward, just finding the beginning point. I look like a zombie. And we're going to cut that. I leave this blank area here, and this is where we're going to throw in my intro later. So, and then we just edit, and I just go through here and edit everything. If I have B-roll shots, I can cut back and forth. I'm not going to go through the whole thing and edit it with you guys just because that would take a good amount of time, but I will show you a little technique that I use all the time. So obviously we have two camera angles here, so if we just start playing this, we're going to have me talking, and let's say I, talk about something specific. Let's find a spot here where I start pointing something out, like right in here. I can just cut the top, cut again, and then I can, V is the activate key. So this whole thing, because it's grayed out here, we don't see it. That's why up in the main screen here, we're seeing the bottom layer here. So if I activate all that stuff, we're gonna see the second angle. So what I like to do is I don't delete anything, I leave it there, but I just cut. So we can see here, I cut out this little area, and I can just activate that. And now we have this nice little edit. So we see the wide shot, and then as we get closer here, it'll cut to the other angle, which is awesome. So that's how I do most of the show, and how I go back and forth between each of the camera angles. This is also great because you can hide a problem. So let's see if I can find a mess up here. So right there, something happened with my matte box. I didn't tighten it down enough, and it slipped right there. So I messed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find right before the mistake happened and make a cut.
That's one way to do it.
Right before that, I'm going to cut there.
But I found.
And I'm going to find the end of the mistake where I pick back up.
So that's one way to do it.
And then I'm going to cut again. I'm going to delete the mistake. And obviously, if we only had one camera, we'd be in trouble here because it would just cut from one jumpy, we would have a terribly jumpy cut like that. What I can do is open this guy up,
when you have this mounted, you could
and then it'll have a nice smooth cut.
EVF setup. So that's one way to do it. But I really like this setup. I've really enjoyed shooting with it. And
cut again, go back to the wide shot, and now this is what we have.
Out here, and that way when you have this mounted, you could have a really nice EVF setup. So that's one way to do it. But I really like this setup. I've really enjoyed shooting with it. And if you're able to
beautiful. So now your viewer will never know that there was a mistake there. That's the beauty of having these two angles. And obviously the other reason is just to have a nice detailed shot of whatever you're talking about, or just another angle. So that's just the basic editing stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and edit this, and then we're going to look at color correction. All right, so now I have this thing pretty much edited down. And what I'm going to do now is just throw the intro in there. And to do that, we're just going to hop to the beginning. I have a pre-made intro. All I got to do is drag it in, drop it in, and check my levels here.
Really made this kind of
audio, just a little lower, perfect. Throw a fade on there.
Hey guys, Caleb here with DSLR.
Perfect. Delete this gap, and we're done. Oh, one last thing I gotta do.
Caleb here with DSLR Video Shooter.
Gotta have those lower thirds, right? And this is really easy to do. You can make a lower third in Photoshop, and when you open it up, it's really cool because you can double click on it and actually change the layers, which is really hot. So fix that little hiccup there. And all we got to do now is play it, make sure it looks right.
And today I wanted to show you something that I threw together with various parts that
something like that.
Really made.
Cut it. Another fun thing about Final Cut X, just select it. Command T throws a transition around it.
And today I wanted to show you something that I threw together with various parts.
And we're done. That's the entire editing. I believe it took me about 20 minutes to do all that. Go through the whole thing. I had lots of mistakes in this episode. So now that we're done, we can do color correction. And this is where you need to think about when in the process you're going to do color correction. Normally I do color correction at the end just because you never know what your final product is going to look like. And rarely is it something like this where you have, you know, the same 2 shots through the whole thing. Usually it's a bunch of B-roll and stuff. So doing the color correction ahead of time can get the job done, and it's actually probably a better way to do this kind of show, and often I'll do that. But in Final Cut X, there's a super quick way to kind of get everything looking the same and paste your edits, your color correction edits across the entire project. So let's go ahead and start with this first angle. And what I like to do is check, obviously, and I did this kind of to show you guys, the white balance is a little off. So this shot, it looked kind of green and cold, very cool. And then this shot, it's very warm. So I kind of like the look of this shot. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this shot, and I just kind of wing stuff. I mean, to be honest, I don't have a lot of time to be editing these, especially like, you know, this edit that we see here, this episode was one of probably 8 that I filmed in one day. And some days sometimes I'll film for 2 days. So I'm just banging these things out and trying to get that stuff done. So I don't, go hardcore crazy on it. But there's 2 things I use every single time when I do color correction. One is a filter, and it's a custom filter. So if we go down here, we're under filters, we go to custom. This is from Ripple Training. It's RT color balance. So I'm just going to drag that and drop it on. And what this gives us, if we click over to our video tab here, it pops up here under effects. And this is kind of like a 3-way color corrector a little bit, or color picker. You click on the highlights, for instance, here, and play with all that stuff. Or you can do a drop down. So I usually use this just to get the white balance correct. Otherwise, you have to go into Final Cut's color thing, which is a little ridiculous, and I much prefer the sliders like this. So really powerful tool. I've used it for various things. But so for instance, if this looks a little cold, we can just grab the reds a little bit and just bring it up a hair. And we want to make sure we don't kill all the other colors. As you can see, you can like pull all the blue out or really amp it up. So I have a pretty good calibration on my monitor, so I get it pretty close like that. And then we're done with that. That's just to make a minor change. So I don't know if you can see that, but if I turn it off here by clicking on this little box here, you can see this was before. It's kind of greenish blue, and then after we warmed it up just a hair. And then this is where the fun really begins. We're going to close that. Now we have our white balance roughly correct. And we're going to now go into the color area here. So under the video tab, you go down to color, and then there's color correction 1. You can stack these up and add more, which we'll do in a little second. And this is where I just kind of do a basic color shift. So what I usually do, say, really typical, you've probably heard this a million times, cool down the shadows, warm up the midtones. And my goal is to get kind of a teal on the shadows and an orange in the midtones. And I'm going to take that down because that's a little ridiculous. Maybe something like that. And what's nice is you don't have to just click and drag if you're more of a numbers guy. down here, you can click on this, for instance, the percentage, and just scrolling up and down, you can dial that in. So I'm going to drop this down a little bit. Something in that ballpark. And then we can jump over to exposure. I overexposed this a little bit. As you can see, this was a crazy day, and so I didn't get a chance to expose. So you can do a global expose down here, and play with your levels a little bit, like this, and try to get that more correct. And it's difficult doing these shows because I want to obviously have my skin exposed correctly, but I also want to make sure you guys can see the gear really well. So I have to be careful with my lighting to make sure that you can see everything. So that's basic color. We've got that done. Let's jump out and see what the before and after looked like. So I can turn that off, turn it on. This is a pretty subtle episode. Not a lot's changed. And some of you are probably thinking, well, Caleb, that background looks really warm. Well, the wall back here actually isn't white or gray. It has a little bit of color in it. So that's actually correct. Now we're going to add another color, and obviously this seems like it's taking a long time, but I've got this down, to a science essentially. So as you do this, you get really fast. So we just created a second color, and we're going to, second correction that is, and we're going to go over here and we're going to add a shape mask. And this is a trick that I've used for a while, and it really is nice for videos like this. So let me start over and walk you through exactly what I'm doing here. So we add the new color, we click on the little circle shape mask, and we get this little circle here right in the middle. I'm going to grab the top little, whatever this is, dragger, go all the way up. So it's, a super long oval. I'm gonna bring it out a little bit, and then you go near the center, you get this little rotator. I'm gonna rotate it, go really long again. And my goal is to get pretty much my entire self and the camera in this thing. Maybe go a little more of an angle. I'm going corner to corner almost. Something like that. A little wider. And now I'm going to, if we look down here, here's our mask. We're going to go all the way over and click on the little right arrow. And this takes us to the same settings we saw before, but this time down here next to mask, we can control what's inside and outside of the actual mask. So I'm going to click on outside, and I'm going to drop the midtones and the highlights a little bit. Oh, that's a lot. Maybe something in there. Now I'm going to click on the little back arrow, and then you can toggle this outline here to turn it on and off. And you can see there's a huge difference. So I'm essentially adding a vignette, but I'm not just doing a, really generic one. I'm doing this crazy angled thing. And what it makes it look like is I spent a ton of time lighting my background. And so it gives you this nice look here. Right now it looks a little fake. So what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna click on this little mask. It shows that you can use this button to hide and show the actual tool here. And so I'm going to grab the outer ring, not the inner ring. The inner ring controls how big it gets and small. But we're going to grab the outer ring. I'm going to bring that out. And that's going to kind of diffuse it a little more. And then I turn it back off so it's easier to see what I'm doing here. I'm going to hop back in. And it defaults to inside. So remember, don't forget to click outside. You could do stuff on the inside if you wanted to just control, the center. We're going to go to outside. I'm just going to play with that a little more. Bring this down a little more, bring that back up. And we're done. So now I can turn this whole thing off, and we can look at the before and after. So before, it was washed out, overexposed, very flat background. Hit again, we get this warmed up skin tones. I'm super white because it's winter and I haven't been outside in what feels like an eternity. And we get this nice kind of exterior look here. So that's pretty much it. I might add a hair sharpening or something like that, but that's gives you a general idea of what I do. Now you're like, well, Caleb, that's one shot, and you have, this whole project that's a mess. And you're right. That's our issue right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that first clip that we corrected and hit Command C, and then I'm going to select all the other ones. So we're going to go to the end here. So now that we have everything selected, I'm going to hit Command, Option, and V, which is paste. And we're going to get this little dialog window. And what I can do here is I can tell it what I want to copy from my first shot to all the other clips, which is 19 clips. You could just dump everything on there. All I'm going to do, let's say you transformed or changed one file in the middle. You don't want to just blanket this. So I just click on Effects, which has got our little color correction, and then, or the white balance correction, and then I'm going to check color. Hit Paste. And now let's jump, this is the very last clip down here, and now we have our color correction all set up. Same thing goes for the second angle. We can easily copy and paste it across the board. So that's a beautiful feature. A lot of other, obviously, nonlinear editors will have the same thing. So that gives you a general overview of how I edit and color correct each of my episodes. Let me know if you have any questions. I know this is kind of a long video and is a little involved, but for those of you who are considering doing something like what I do, this is how I roll with doing production for the podcast. And again, let me know if you have any questions at all. I'd be happy to help out. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.